AI can benefit humanity in many different ways, but the more human-like applications become, the more we rely on it to do what we were made to do, the greater the danger that we become alienated from some part of our lives, our real humanness, and that's the image or nature of God in us. Engagement with AI applications can shape our sentiments and what we love, almost without our being aware, because everyone else is caught up in them. This technology has become a mediator between us and others, between us and our world. It's become nothing less than a digital priesthood. Yet, God wants us to become more like His image, not less. In this study series, Masters or Slaves? AI and the Future of Humanity, we're exploring how AI is impacting what it means to be a human being made in God's likeness, and what we need to do to protect our ability to be faithful image bearers so that we can be masters rather than slaves of AI. On our journey to discover how AI is threatening our humanity and our ability to reflect God's image in us, we've looked at how it's stealing our minds and our relationships, stealing our privacy and freedom, our moral responsibility, and our jobs. Last time we considered how AI could end up stealing our consciousness of what is real as we become sucked in to lifelike virtual worlds and virtual people overlaying the real world. In our final session, Soul Purpose, we'll draw together what we've learnt and think about God's call for us to imitate Him and how best to engage with AI applications so that we don't diminish our ability to reflect His image in us. Here's the problem. The more human-like and convenient AI technology becomes, the more it erases the distinction between online and offline, whilst at the same time creating an illusion of more control of our lives and our digital world. The modern world assumes also that technology and therefore AI are progress, and that progress is good and will result in human flourishing. Yet the evidence, as we've seen, is that this technology is having a profound effect on our souls and is already beginning to control us, leading us into captivity to the artifacts that we have made. So what's the solution? We need to reclaim our souls by setting boundaries for our engagement with AI and imitate Christ's behaviour. Our starting point is to recognize and to celebrate the distinctiveness of what it means to be human, what it really means to be made with something of the divine nature. Although the image of God in us is affected by our sin and our desire for moral autonomy, Christ has freed us from slavery to sin. The Apostle Paul tells the Ephesian Christians to be imitators of God. He encourages the Colossian church to remember that their new self is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its creator. Paul instructs the Galatians that they should keep in step with the Spirit, whose fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. This fruit is nothing less than a reflection of the image of God, whom we are to imitate and in whose image we are made. We must therefore be thoughtful about how we use technology, especially seductive technology that on the surface seems harmless, simply convenient, the way things are done. But nonetheless, it is shaping us in ways that diminish the fruits of the Spirit and our ability to be good mirrors of God's image in us. These are huge challenges for us as Christians because we can so easily be squeezed into the patterns of behaviour of the world around us. Long before the rise of artificial intelligence, John Stott observed that probably the greatest tragedy of the Church throughout its long and checkered history has been its consistent tendency to conform to the prevailing cultures instead of developing a Christian counterculture. In this course, we've looked at 6 key effects of AI applications on our ability to reflect God's image in us. You can find a downloadable table summarizing those on our website, mastersorslaves.com. In reality, these applications of AI represent a spectrum of risk. Some are benign, they do us no harm, and they can be of benefit to humanity, so we can embrace them. Others, like autonomous weapons, mass surveillance and sex robots, lie at the other end of the spectrum, doing significant damage to what it means to be a human being made in God's likeness. And we should avoid them, perhaps even campaign for them to be banned. In the middle of this spectrum of risk, there are a range of applications like digital assistants, social media, decision support systems such as medical image analysis, and task automation, where we need to exercise caution over our engagement. On our website, there's also a downloadable checklist that you can use for assessing applications like digital assistants and their impact on you. Some of these applications pose real challenges because there are both potential benefits, like improved safety for people, but also downsides, like a loss of privacy and freedom. In resolving these tensions, too often the argument is to default to what's called utilitarian ethics, the greater good of society. I believe that a better way to resolve these tensions is to think about what is virtuous. Interestingly, Plato, several hundred years before the birth of Christ, argued that the character of a good city hinges on virtue. Peter's second letter encourages Christians to supplement their faith with virtue. In fact, virtue can be seen as a mirror of the fruits of the Spirit, and it gives us a framework for evaluating a course of action when thinking about using some AI applications, like facial recognition, predictive policing, or criminal justice. The questions that we need to ask in balancing the potential benefits on the one hand versus the harms on the other comes down to asking whether it's wise, whether it's just. When there are downsides, it will take courage and self-control not to deploy an application that could harm us in some way. It might be facial recognition in mass surveillance, machine learning in exam grade prediction, or predictive policing, even setting bail in the criminal justice system. Whilst convenience and efficiency are not in themselves wrong, virtue would prefer not deploying an application like a decision support system, say in the criminal justice system, if injustice could result, especially where there would be no mechanism for a human adjudication, and also where people begin to rely on the decisions of the AI system. As individuals and families, we might need to exercise self-control in engaging with virtual or augmented reality, digital assistants and social media, where we can see that it could suck us in. Overcoming addiction is a lot harder than not going there in the first place. As we grapple with the issues set out in this course and in my book, it's my prayer that we'll be equipped to resist the devil and the diminishing of our true self as AI encroaches on our lives. It's also my prayer that as we confront the issues I've raised and respond accordingly, we may become salt and light in the communities in which God has placed us. May we, through our behaviour, lives and conversations, show a different way, and so be true icons of the God who made us. With God's help, we can be confident that as we shine, we'll also act like salt, a preservative for the future of our humanity.